topic is going to be Gabbie Hanna, which, like, there is so much. To give you guys, like, a very, very brief rundown of her career is that she has been an influencer since the days of Vine, which I honestly feel like we're at a point in time now where Vine is so old that a lot of people probably weren't old enough to be around for it. But it was one of the first short form content platforms where you were able to upload 6-second videos. And it sounds really short, but people were able to do a surprising amount with 6 seconds. If you kind of want a feel for this and you've somehow never come across old Vine content, you could find compilations. But one thing that I have to point out before I send you to a compilation is that this was in the peak of the era where comedy was a little bit about shock value. It was a little bit about saying things that, like, were racist or misogynistic or, like, I don't know, just really out of pocket and making that the joke. And, you know, getting that shock laughter kind of thing. If you ever watch any of the documentaries that people put on YouTube about Shane Dawson's old content, oh my gosh, like, his was the worst of that, because, like, even for back then, it crossed from being, like, shock humor to just shocking.
If you need...
Why people moved over to YouTube is because Vine used to be connected to Twitter, and at some point it became not profitable at all because there were no ads on it. There was sponsored content, but it was like deals directly with the creators. It was not like, you know, the app was making no money at all. And yet there were so many people using it. It was probably taking up a ton of data and stuff. So eventually that app went offline, and it was kind of this planned thing where people knew it was going to happen. And so a lot of them had already started shifting over to YouTube. Now, because YouTube started having longer videos, people would upload what they called story times. And a story time was essentially someone getting on camera and telling a crazy story about their life. It's kind of like the content that I did back when I first got on TikTok. Very much calling back to that because I was a fan of that era. Now, in terms of Gabbie Hanna, I did know who she was on Vine. I did kind of somewhat find her funny. A lot of her old Vines, if you look up a compilation of her Vines, are usually self-deprecating jokes, or like the one that got super big is her running around in a sports bra and saying, like, the caption was something about being white in a black neighborhood and saying, "I'm going to steal all your baby daddies." It did not age very well. I know she had some that were, because people used to like to come up with characters that would be like reoccurring in their Vines, kind of similar to, you know, the people that do, like, I don't know what to call it, but where they're like acting out clips and they're both characters on TikTok. It's kind of similar to that content. And so she had one character that was like a goth girl, and the whole thing was like, "You don't understand me and my family." Like, that was the crux of the joke. But yeah, her Vine career, she did collaborate with a lot of the big people, because that's something that ended up happening with Vine was eventually, you know, like if you had a bunch of followers on Vine, you would meet up with other people that had a bunch of followers on Vine and do Vines together and hope to cross-pollinate like the audiences that way. So that's also kind of what I think led to people going to YouTube was, you know, like one person would be like, I'm not really focusing on Vine anymore. I'm doing long form content on YouTube. And then you would see all their friends kind of move over. So Drew Gooden is a good example. And Danny Gonzalez was one of his friends. He was somewhat friends with, what's his name? He got canceled for sleeping with Tana.
Oh, Cody.
Oh, yes, that's his name. Noel, his friend, was also from Vine. Logan Paul, I can't remember if the other Paul brother was doing it too. Maybe not as much. But yeah, all of those people shifted over. Gabbie was a storytime content person, and a lot of her most viral ones were about like seeing ghosts or having stalkers. Those stories, for whatever reason, used to get the most. I mean, Tana was another storytime YouTuber who had a lot of stalker stories. Dating stories were big there. And so people would talk about their Tinder dates and some of the cross pollination that happened was at one point, Gabbie Hanna became friends with another person from Vine, Jessi Smiles. And they were at one point doing YouTube content together and living together. But they had some mysterious falling out where if you were following both of them at the time, you had zero clue. Like I remember genuinely looking for why they fell out. Might have seen something on Beauty Guru Chatter about it, or maybe like somebody random's Twitter thread that claimed to not even be a friend of Jessi or Gabbie, but a friend of Jen Dent. And it was all like, it was kind of talking about what eventually came out, but I don't remember the full context of it and remember being confused by the story even back then. But that was kind of something that lurked in the background of their careers for a second because they were so connected in their content. And aside from Jessi having a very, very personal, like, incident of sexual assault happen to her, like, all we knew was that, like, Gabbie was still friends with so many of the popular Viners, and the guy who sexually assaulted Jessi was a popular Viner. So people thought that it had to have, like, it had to have been something with those two. Like, it had to have been something around that situation. Now, Gabbie went on to continue having a YouTube career, started putting out music and stuff, but then it seemed as soon as she got into music, really, she kind of got messier and messier, and that's when the drama started creeping up. So she would randomly have all of these incidents, like, because I can think of one incident that happened before the music stuff, but she wasn't wrong in that one, and everybody admits it. It's the rice gum thing. I don't think she was putting out music when the rice gum thing happened, but she was at some party with this guy who used to write like diss tracks about other YouTubers named Rice Gum. And she was like trying to vlog at this party and he was getting annoyed with her and he smacked her phone out of her hand. And Gabbie used the words, "He hit me." And like he made it a whole thing of, I didn't hit her. I like smacked her phone out of her hand. And like Gabbie ended up having to defend herself against all these people who went misogynistic with it, of like, oh, you're just crying because you're a girl and you picked a fight with a guy, and like he actually did something about it. There were quite a few people that defended her in that situation, being like, no, he could have done something else. Like, that was not necessary. And yeah, it's a weird way to say hit, but like he did technically hit her. One of the ones that kind of started a huge part of the crash out was that some girl on Twitter had said the speculation about why Jessi and Gabbie were no longer friends. Actually, I believe Deanna, I don't even know if they go by that. I think they're now non-binary, but when this all came out, they were feminine identifying and named Deanna on Twitter. I'm not sure if that's still what they go by. But they had put out a tweet that said something to the effect of, oh, Gabbie Hanna, the one who betrayed her friend for the guy who raped her, or something like that. And Gabbie, because this wasn't, like it wasn't on Twitter where she mentioned her or anything like that, Gabbie would have had to search for it. Gabbie just DMs this girl. And she starts going off about, like, me and Jessi have no bad blood. Look here, Jessi just asked me for a job. And, like, starts trying to say her case of why she didn't leave her best friend for Curtis at that point, when this is a random minor she's talking to in the DMs.
The thing from that is the important thing with her is that she was trying to prove or just say that she never defended Curtis and that she never took his side when she did. She did. That's the most important part of that story.
Yeah.
And so for years by this point, this was in 2019. The stuff with Curtis came out in like
Hmm.
2013. And so
Yes.
her and Jessi stopped being friends in like 2015, somewhere around there. And so for like 4 years by this
Hmm.
point, they weren't friends anymore. And Gabbie was going around trying to privately convince people that she never said something that she did. Um, she
Hmm.
did say that. She apologized to Jessi at the time for doing it.
I think any of us, when they hear, like, hey, I listened to your rapist describe how they raped you, would not be okay
Well,
with that.
Jessi reported it because she had a really good friend that pointed out what happened. Essentially, she got a concussion. He was very aggressive about her going over to his house after they broke up to spend the night there, and she had a concussion.
Hmm.
Like he like wouldn't stop wanting her to go over there. You know why he was so aggressive about that. Don't pretend like he's better than he is. And so she goes over there and she like woke up kind of because she had a concussion to him doing that, and it was like hazy enough that the next morning she wasn't sure if it actually happened or not, but she talked to a friend of hers that was like, no, you don't make stuff up like that. And no, you don't make stuff up like that. Just as like a
Hmm.
general rule, you don't do that. Your brain doesn't do that. And so, and at least not like that specifically like that. And so she went to the police. She called the police. She called him when she was like talking to the cops, and he admitted to doing that. And so he actually, there was like no like back and forth in the actual like court system, which like hardly ever happens. But in this situation, the back and
Yeah.
forth was purely from Gabbie online. Even people who wanted to like defend him or whatever, like he admitted that he did it, and was and took a plea deal, and just admitted that he did it. And so there wasn't
Mhm.
like a question of if he was guilty or not, because he was recorded by the cops admitting that he did do it. And afterwards he
Yeah.
tried to say that she called TMZ to have it be like a bigger story, to try to use it for like fame. And that is what Gabbie said in the DMs. She said, like, oh, Jessi contacted TMZ and made it a bigger story because she thought that people would take her side. And I was like, that is what Curtis said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
No
She
person,
said that.
no person, even, not even just a girl, no person on planet Earth would assume that anyone would believe you. Ever.
Okay, to circle back to Jessi Smiles really quick to connect the grooming part. So with the whole thing with that one person she DM'd, like trying to give her side of the Curtis thing, Jessi made some response videos. This exchange never really had a clear ending at first, and so eventually Gabbie Hanna comes back to the internet after taking a break, where she decides she's going to put out this docu series that's going to be justifying all of the situations where she's gotten a bad reputation. First of which was Escape the Night, which was a thing where they first started YouTube Plus, I think, where it was a special series that Daniel Prada and Joey Graceffa did. And it was a murder mystery series that involved actual YouTubers. And Gabbie Hanna was one of the people that was on it. Um, from that, there was a lot of things circulating about how Gabbie was a really, really bad star on it because she had all of these requests that were like crazy when you actually, like, I'm sure it's still up somewhere, but she was requesting things like, oh, I'm on a special diet, so I need fresh food. And so, like Daniel Prada went out to Whole Foods to grab some pre prepared food. She didn't touch it, and she was like, this isn't good enough. And he's shown things that they had on set for her, and she's like, no, this food's triggering my ED, and made it hard for everybody. She was mad that her costume didn't fit, even though she didn't get to the costume fittings before time. There was so much of it of her being a diva.
Yeah, the best way I know how to describe Gabbie Hanna, if you don't actually want to watch any of her old content, which is understandable because it's very aggravating to watch it, which is why most people watch it through like reaction sort of videos, so you get like a break of when you're about to like lose it, is that she's literally that person that is like, how am I a victim? Let me go on Google or now on ChatGPT, and you can just tell from the videos that she makes that she just Googles like psychological terms she hears people say and then convinces herself that people have done these things to her, and then says those words 7,000 times in videos, like thinking that she's so right about this because I read this one Google article on Wikipedia about whatever, and then people on the internet point out how ridiculous she sounds, and then she like disappears for a while, does the same thing again, and comes back and tries to do the same thing again with like new terms. That's literally all she does, is she just cycles through whatever term. Like, you can tell in 2021 she learned what a narcissist was.
The second video she did in that series was about a situation that happened where it was kind of a trend back then to, oh, I'm going to dress like this thing. So she did an I'm going to dress like an e-girl video, where she accidentally, or so she claims, pulled up an article about a girl who was brutally murdered, and also groomed, by the way. And so she got a lot of blowback of people being like, this is super insensitive, that girl was murdered and you have her image in your video. For that one, she like quietly changed the video, and so people were still mad at her, and she had to eventually actually give an apology. Most people will admit this apology was actually a good one, but when she came back and did this docu-series, she basically blamed the whole thing on drama channels and was like, it's your guys' fault that all of this blew up and that poor family had to deal with it because you made it a big deal. Like, basically saying they Streisand affected it in a way. But it's more so because Gabbie never responds to situations very well that people were like, hello, are you gonna say anything when this happened? Instead of just letting her get away with like quietly changing the video. But yeah, her initial apology was good. Her return in the docuseries, I think Angelica Oles was the person she singled in on with this one, the drama channel that she singled in on. And she's like, you personally need to apologize to the family, and not just privately, you need to apologize to them publicly. And so Angelica Oles reached out to the family, and they're like, we have no idea who you are, but thank you. And so, yeah, that became a thing with it. And then Jessi Smiles was going to be the next subject of the docuseries. And what got released instead was this 4-hour phone call you'll hear us refer to, which, again, this still exists online. You can probably find it somewhere. Not really worth going through because it's exactly what you would expect from Gabbie Hanna. If you just like look at people's content about her, it's everything you'd expect. But while all of this situation is going on, Gabbie had a really, really loyal Patreon following. And her Patreon followers, she really treated them like they were in real life friends. Like, she was constantly going on lives with them. A lot of them felt like they had this extra access to her. And that's why in this era, you saw a lot of fan accounts for her. I would say in a way that you don't always see for influencers in particular. Because like all of these people just grew more and more parasocially attached to her. So while she's on this campaign of defending herself, she has this army of people also defending her in Twitter, basically. And they're fighting with not just like other fans of like say Trisha or Jessi or anyone she's bringing up in these situations. They're literally fighting with those people themselves. One person who gets brought into the Jessi Smiles Gabbie Hanna beef a lot is another Viner that came up. Her name, she goes by Jen Dent online. I don't think that's her actual name. And she got like kind of famous for this one video of her dancing really spazzily for some reason. I can't remember any of her other content, but she became part of the Vine friend group from that. And her and Jessi were especially close. So she was one of the people vehemently defending Jessi online. And the fans of Gabbie Hanna went in on her so bad that somebody created a fake account to then accuse Jen Dent of CSA. And Jen Dent was a nurse at the time. I think she still is like a home healthcare nurse or something like that. So she like legitimately could have faced really big real world consequences from this. And that's when Jessi had to step in again and like talk about Gabbie Hanna again, how she'll never quit, how she knew this part in the series was coming up about her. And like what I have to say about this next part, I have to admit some wrongdoing because you could totally still find this on Twitter. I never nuked my old Twitter. I was one of the people arguing with Gabbie Hanna stans. And it was one of those situations where you don't necessarily even know who you're arguing with, because this was the type of fandom where everybody changed their profile to Gabbie Hanna. Every single username referenced Gabbie Hanna or GJH, which is her initials, Gabbie Jean Hanna. And so like they all kind of blended together after a while, to be honest, of who these people were, unless like there was maybe a handful who had posted anything identifying online. But most of them were just generic fan accounts. And so anytime they would get into these big arguments with people that they were trying to start fights with, so like Jen Dent, for example, when Jen Dent would start going in on them, oh, I'm a minor. And then when she would then treat them like a minor, like, where are your parents? They'd be like, I'm a full-grown adult. And it was such a back and forth that shouldn't have ever happened. And I am admitting this as a person who was a part of it, because there was kind of this feeling, at least from the Jessi Smile, Team Jessi side of it, that it felt like, okay, we're standing up for something good here. But I do now see, like, looking back on it, collectively, I would say Team Jessi, our average age group, much, much older than Team Gabbie. It was probably all teenagers that were her Patreon followers who all felt this. And I'm saying teenagers, even if they were 18, 19. That's still a teenager, even though, you know, in our society, you're classified as an adult. Very much the energy of, I'm young, this is my person, I somehow identify with her. A lot of them with her music, so it makes a lot more sense now in hindsight that a lot of them liked her so much. But yeah, they were going to bat for her in a way that really only makes sense for young kids, honestly. Yeah. And saying very, very cruel stuff about Jessi at the time. Jessi was pregnant. She was, you know, like the whole thing centers around her sexual assault happening. And so they would say things that just felt really gross. And like all of that, and this is just our inkling, was fueled by Gabbie being so personable with them. Gabbie being so, like, always at their beck and call, showing them everything. And we saw somewhat of an extension of that when she did go manic on TikTok, because she was online with her Patreons all the time, too.
The thing of her patrons and her fans that I think is like it shows, this is like one of the things with Gabbie Hanna, that recently she was going back and forth with Adam McIntyre, who is the victim who tried to get people to listen about Colleen Ballinger for a while before people finally did. I'm not
Here.
even sure what made people finally listen to him about that in 2021 or 2022, one of those years. But he is the one that helped
Okay.
finally get that out there. In the back and forth she had with him, she mentioned how she didn't know anything about what Colleen was doing at the time and was like sorry for what happened to him
Mm-hmm.
because some of the people in her comments were trying to say that he was that she didn't do anything to him basically. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is amazing that she said that out loud because she did the exact same thing with her fans, but for some reason nobody ever talks
Yes.
about it. And I don't get it.
Mm-mm.
People talk about everything else when it comes to Gabbie Hanna, but somehow they glaze over this very obvious abuse that she was doing to these kids. Like yeah, I
Yes.
she did the same thing that Colleen Ballinger did to Adam, but somehow people just like didn't notice because the people she was doing it to were annoying or like mean. And it was like kids are being
Yeah.
abused even when they're mean. That's actually a good indicator that they are is when they're mean because they're usually
Mm-hmm.
not very nice. But the thing I wanted to make the point of especially is that like I was trying to say before, Gabbie cares about what the public knew. She doesn't care if she does horrible messed up things to people privately. What she only ever cared about is if the public found out about it. The way that she controlled um like her public perception basically was her fans. She harmed her fans
Mm-hmm.
by being very accessible to them by in the videos when she mentions having help from people who like research things for her that would like watch the other people's videos for her. That is her patrons, her fans that were literal
Yeah.
children in high school.
They were paying
Yeah.
her to do.
And children. They were like 15, 16-year-old children and that were going out and like felt like it was their duty that they had to protect her from these other people. And so
Mm-hmm.
they would go and watch these people's content and then send her certain clips and parts of their videos for her to respond to. And so she
Yeah.
used these kids as a way to try to control how people talked about her online. Like whenever somebody would say something that anywhere online that they didn't like, she would they those people would find that person and just basically harass them enough until they took the comment down. And so like Gabbie, like the
Mm-hmm.
whole idea of like a flying monkey, like that's like a
Yeah.
it's a narcissistic abuse term, but it's like
One
an
of the
actual like
narcissistic.
mental health sort of term too, where the basic idea of that is that even when you have like the abusive person in your life blocked, there's other people around them that still can contact you and like continue like the narrative that that person has. And so during these years when
Mm-hmm.
Gabbie was making videos on and off about Jessi, it wasn't only the things that Gabbie would say in the videos that was the issue. It was also her fans were also in the comment sections of anything that Jessi ever posted saying the same sort of thing and feeling like they need to
Mm-hmm.
defend her. And so Gabbie obviously figured out that she didn't have to be the one to try to harass all of these different creators that don't like her anymore personally. It was easier to get other people to do it. Literal children. And she figured out that if she
Yeah.
was just nice to those kids, said things to them in videos, made them feel special, that they would just do whatever she said. And so she is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely she exploited the hell out of those kids and also put them in the middle of a firestorm of just so much like honestly trauma that she was putting them through.
Mhm.
Like she did that just so that she could try to control the narrative about herself, and it was easier to have these other people do it. And she never felt any guilt about that ever. Still to this day, I'm sure she doesn't. But it's just like she used those kids. These are literal children. And if you're, I can say this as somebody who did this sort of stuff online when I was also in high school. Obviously, a lot different because social media didn't really exist then. But still, if you're a high schooler in and you're on social media enough to be like embedded in a fandom
Mhm.
like this, it's because you probably are struggling with socializing with people in your real life. And that's why a lot of
Mhm.
times people who use the internet a lot have like some sort of mental health issues. Like a lot of us have depression, anxiety, PTSD of varying levels because talking to people online,
Mhm.
it's easier to like be more vulnerable online. It's easier to talk to people when you have like a certain thing in common. Like that's why I was always bouncing around to different fandoms for a really long time because it was very easy to like make friends when you already have this like big subject that you can always go back and talk about, that you can share, instead of having to like start from, nothing like most people do. And so a lot of those kids were probably lonely. They probably didn't have a lot of people to talk
Mhm.
to. They definitely, kids in overall, are looking for approval from adults. They're especially going to be looking for approval from an influencer that they look up to, that they want to be like one day online. Somebody that's, you know, a little bit older than them, that they feel like could, that they know all these things, that they could like teach them or something. And so those kids were definitely
Yeah.
like wanting to, make her happy and they want to be included with her. They want to be a part of her life and a part of her world. They want to know like about what's going on with her friends. They want to know what's going on with like her boyfriends. They want to know what's going on with her, and she would tell them things like that to like make them do these absolutely vicious things to other people, to other adults her age or older, um so that she didn't have to do it
Mhm.
herself, and instead had them doing these things. And um none of those kids deserved that. And they were put in the middle of
No.
like these very dramatic situations constantly, and they were too young um to understand,
Mhm.
because this is like a whole thing with me. I get really mad how people talk about teenagers in general. Teenagers are just tall. They're not actually as mature as people act like they are. They're just taller. They're still
Mhm.
developmentally like a child. They are obviously like growing and maturing as the years go on. But there's not an adult at
Mhm.
all. And so like I was telling Mandy today that I was watching a video that I watched a year ago where it was somebody that would try to defend Jessi a lot back then. And in the video she was like talking about
Mhm.
Gabbie's fans and was like flabbergasted by the idea that they didn't realize that they were like committing like borderline crimes or just crimes in general. And
Mhm.
I'm like, because they're children. And like me watching this video, the person that
Yeah.
was saying it was like our age. Like she was like early 30s at the time. And I'm like, you're definitely old enough to realize this. They don't realize that they're committing crimes because they're literal children who don't understand. Kids don't, they have a lot of emotions. They do
Mhm.
things more impulsively because they haven't completely developed the skills of being able to like sit and think about things in the long term, or even like be able to conceptualize the idea of like long-term consequences is not something that teenagers understand
Mhm.
at all. That's why they'll like just do crazy things sometimes. And you'll just see them do like funny, even like funny stunts or whatever, like skateboarding off of whatever, and not thinking about like that they might get hurt, because they can't conceptualize the idea that they might get hurt or injured or die or whatever unless they've known somebody who has. It's just like not something that they think is like really possible. And so those kids thought that this was all just like a fun game. That's I'm sure that's all they thought they were
Mhm.
doing. They thought they were defending Gabbie from these people that they don't like, but they don't take it as seriously as adults do, because they just don't. Kids that age don't do that. They just can't, they honestly can't do that yet. And so they weren't thinking about it as like any sort of real life consequences. um they were thinking about like they're just
Mhm.
doing something to make this influencer they like happy. This is what she wants, so I'm going to do it. But they wouldn't think about it that hard, because they're
Yeah.
kids. They just want to be involved in this community and want to stay like friends with the people that they found in that community. That's all they were thinking about.
Yeah.
And Gabbie was the one that told them to go tell Jessi that she was a bad mother, or say that she was lying about being raped, or um, make up that thing about Jen Dent. Like, if I like seriously need people to, if you ever look back at the things that those people were saying, they did not come up with that shit themselves. Do not be stupid. Do not be
No.
stupid. No child came up with that. That was Gabbie Hanna. She wasn't telling them exactly what to say, but she had to know what those
Yeah.
kids would
That's what I
do,
was about.
like what they would say if she told them to go after these people. There was even like a story back in like 2020, 2021, that there were like some of these kids on her Discord that didn't
Mhm.
like what she was doing by this point, and she pulled some of them into like a private group
Mhm.
and tried to scare them all by saying that she was going to, saying like, hey, I brought you in here so that so that you can give me your parents contact information, so that I can, so that my attorney can send information to them, because I'm going to sue you all. And the kids that were in there
Mhm.
were obviously terrified about what she was talking about or why. And she literally, like, these were quite literally 14-year-olds. They were 14. And
Mhm.
Gabbie Hanna brought them into this private thing just to scare them, because they were just saying that they didn't like what she was doing. And it brought up the police or
Yeah.
suing their parents to scare them. And then and then she, at the end of it, she's like, oh, I would never do that to you guys. And they were like, what? And like those kids were told other people about that, which is why people found out about that. But like, she took a bunch of 14-year-old kids that just
Mhm.
didn't like what she was doing, and brought them into another Discord to scare the hell out of them, so that they wouldn't, so that the other kids wouldn't start like waking up and realizing what they were doing and not liking it either. Like, that is showing that she knows that what
Yeah.
she's doing is wrong. She knows that she's grooming these children to do these things for her, so that she doesn't have to do it herself, so that she can get what she wants. She's just trying to make it last as long as possible before these kids realize like what they're really doing, and they stop. Because kids usually do get to a certain age, like when you graduate high school and you go to college, and you're not online as much if you make friends at
Mhm.
college or something, then that's usually the time when you kind of look back at that stuff and you're like, what the heck was that? Um, and so she was trying to be as like
Mhm.
enmeshed with them as possible, but it's just, it makes me really upset that people just like skate over that. Like,
Yeah, she got away with it way too easy. So, on the note of, she might not have said it directly, at least even just like creating the environment where people feel safe how to do it is enough to kind of be guilty in our eyes of like, these are children, you're responsible for them in a way because you're creating this space for them. Like, and then you're also having them say all of these things here. Why aren't you telling them, hey, if we have any concern that something criminal is happening, let's get, investigators involved or
yeah.
something like that, not having these kids be Twitter
And
vigilantes.
the thing I really wanted to say about that was, um, for our own real life experience, that I feel like we're good ones to talk about this
Mhm.
because we had the epic musical fandom harass us a lot for a while, and
Yeah.
so we know what it's like when like teenagers are doing that sort of thing at you, and how they can say like mean
Mhm.
comments or whatever, but the when you can go back on our YouTube channel and find those videos if you want to see what happened, but essentially the
Mhm.
basically thing of it was that I just made a video saying that I didn't like the Hold 'Em Down song. I think anyone who knows anything about me and then listens to that song, it's pretty obvious why I wouldn't like it. And so I said it at the time
Mhm.
when Epic Musical was ending, and so that fandom was very active, and I didn't realize that at the time. And because we were like listening to it and we didn't know anything about it, and we were still listening to it when that song came out. Somebody warned me about it, and so we didn't really I didn't know that it had been going on for like 2 or 3 years by that point, and that the fandom was like extremely active at that time because it was ending. And so people
Mhm.
eventually shared my video around, and they all of a sudden were harassing me a lot for like a month or so. And we're around on and off for like 6 months. I stopped mentioning Medusa on my TikTok because whenever I did, some of the kids that were still watching me, would show up to just be mean about that because that was one of those things those kids brought up. But even as like bad as that
Mhm.
stuff got, um, was I was telling Mandy at the time and also thinking about it like these kids are going to feel bad about this one day. And I just like kept thinking like I want them to stop because I know that they're going to realize one day that they were used, because one like an example I guess of like how Gabbie had to have known what she would be bringing on these people when she told her fans to do that is that like one of the things that Jorge, who is the writer of Epic the Musical, does is that he shares the songs that
Mhm.
he's writing as he's writing the musical, which pretty much guarantees that everyone's going to like it. Because if you're sharing the
Mhm.
songs with your fans as they go along, they feel like they're a part of the creative process. Not only does that make it guarantee that they're going to think the songs are great, but it also guarantees that if anyone like us comes up and says that they don't like it because we're not personally invested in this story and we're just listening to it for like the art that it is,
Mhm.
people will attack it because they feel this personal connection. They feel like they are a part of this thing. And so they feel like this ownership of it and that they need to protect it. They feel like we were attacking them when we said that we didn't like this musical. And so nobody who is like an adult,
Mhm.
which Jorge was, would not know that that's what these people would do. He knew that. He also has a private Discord where he would talk to fans, and he used to talk to
Yeah.
them like every single week. He has a Patreon still. That he used to like do like
Mhm.
weekly live streams where he would like watch a video with his fans. And he used to not he
Mhm.
used to release new songs in the Discord. And so you had to like be in the Discord in their live streams in order to hear it for the first time. No one's going to sit there and be like the song sucks when like the person who wrote it is sitting there in there with you watching it along with you. And so that's a very
Mhm.
obvious example that like he was very obviously making choices where people wouldn't do that. And so when people like us, and we're not the only people who were harassed by that fandom, were harassed, he never said anything because he was too chicken, honestly, to ever do it because he doesn't want those people to turn on him. But the fact that there's no way that he doesn't know that his fans were like eviscerating people alive because they were doing it to a lot of different people. He had to know that people
Mhm.
were telling him that he was a very online creator. And so he knew that that was happening and chose not to say anything because he knew how vicious those people could be. And he didn't want them to be mean to him. And so he just like let us all just
Pretty.
get attacked like that so that he was fine. To the point that even when his artist got attacked, he even was like afraid to really be as hard on them as he should have because he still, I think now, is afraid of them turning on him. It's a little different now because it's been gone for like a year or so, so some of them are like realizing. Um, but like when a story about
Yeah.
him mistreating an ex came out, like a lot of those fans um, were trying to defend him. Some of them realized
Mm-hmm.
when they saw that stuff and they couldn't ignore it, and some of them were like, "Okay, I'm out now." But some of them were trying to defend him, even though he never actually said anything. Um, and it's the same sort of thing that
Yeah.
Gabbie also did to a more extreme level, but it's the same behavior. And so for me, I
Yeah.
when I look at that, I'm like, if I'm the one being harassed by kids who are mad at me because I didn't like a song about rape when I'm a rape victim, where they're literally making videos making fun of me for being upset about that. Somebody left a comment saying that I
Mm-hmm.
was lying about being raped because I was too fat. And it, like, there are other things like that, like saying that I got many DMs telling me that I needed to go to therapy, which is funny because I'd been in it already for 7 years by that point. And just very like dehumanizing sort of comments because I was just a problem instead of like a person. But even those people, they figured out after a little while, they had to see that I had a point. Some of them, they distort what you're trying to say, but when I pointed out what I was actually saying, they couldn't say anything else because they knew that I had a point about this. And they kind of eventually just like faded
Mm-hmm.
away. And we could have sat there and made videos about them forever, but it wouldn't, it would just be like
Yeah.
prolonging it. And there's like nothing good that would come out of that. But the main thing that I just thought of was like, if I'm going through all that and I'm able to still like remember that like these are kids that Jorge has like teed up to feel like they need to defend him because they feel like they're defending themselves. Um, I want them to stop because
Mm-hmm.
I know that they're going to look back at this one day and feel bad about the things they said to me and the things they said
Yeah.
to other people. And I don't want it to be that bad for them. I don't know why, especially Jen Dent. Jen Dent's like my age. I don't know why she didn't like shut up.
I feel like she's older
Yeah,
than
she's
you.
old, and I'm like, I said to you earlier, like, I don't know why. This is why I feel like trauma therapy is always the move because I don't think she really did that as much as she should have about her life. Because if you do that, then you're able to let people misrepresent you a lot easier because you just realize that like this isn't a good idea for me personally to be involved in this like chaos all the time and you don't
Mm-hmm.
want it anymore. Once you like have some peace, you realize that like, oh, this actually feels nice. But she like wasn't
Mm-hmm.
figuring that out and just was not able to control her anger and especially was like going after these kids. And even if they're doing horrible things, they are kids that are not old enough to fully grasp what they're doing and they're also being directed to do that by an adult. And it just felt like every it felt like Gabbie got away with grooming these children to just attack all the people
Yeah.
that she didn't like to try to like make her career last.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it feels like she got away with it the way that she has because the people that were doing it were like
Yeah.
really mean. And so it feels like the story of like every I don't even know what to call it. Like there's a term for it, but I'm not thinking of it right now. But it's that whole thing that if you're like basically mean or like annoying when you're being abused by somebody, people focus on you instead of the person that's actually doing it. And that's like what it feels like. Like these
Mm-hmm.
people, these young girls were aggressive enough to people that they were just like mad at them and never got past the fact that these girls were only doing this because Gabbie was telling them to. And that they are the ones that should get all of the smoke that people were actually directing towards her followers. Like she is the one. She
Yeah.
is the one. But instead they were like, so she just basically had them say the most anger filled sort of things, so that people just were so angry that they never were able to calm down enough to like really think about, like, do I think this literal teenage child is the one like doing this? Do I think that this child would be like making up like CSA things against Jen Dent if Gabbie was mad that Jen doesn't want to be friends with her anymore either? Like, no, of course not. And Gabbie was also the one instigating it more, like in her Patreon, being like, "Oh, I heard about the allegations against Jen Dent, and they're very concerning, and I want all of you to be safe one day, so please be careful around her." And things like that, and was like bringing it up to Jessi, and it's like she knows that none of that was true, but that's her like instigating
Mm-hmm.
it. And a lot of those kids were too young to understand how she was manipulating them, because when you're a kid that young, you don't think about it in the way that other people do, unless you've been abused by somebody, an adult already. You just don't think about it's the way I would compare it is how autistic people are all the time. And I'm an autistic person, so I can say this, that we tend to take things at like face value. Like when people say things, I just think like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And that's it. And even when everyone else seems to understand that they're like joking or there's something else going on, I just like don't pick up on it and feel really stupid. But that's like how teenagers are a lot of the time. Like when an influencer person tells them that, oh, this is like a serious allegation, you need to take it seriously. Or like, if you take this allegation seriously, we can get Jen off the internet and she's a dangerous person anyway. If she like described it like that, which she would have,
Yeah.
then they would do it and not think about it any further and just think like, yeah, she's a dangerous person because Gabbie says she is. And so I'm doing everybody a service by getting rid of her. That's how they would look at it and
Yeah.
not think about the idea of like, why would Gabbie be asking me to do something like this? Kids that young just don't think about the complexities of that stuff, because you start learning more of that those complexities, unless you're forced to learn it by somebody abusing you already when you're like in your 20s. That's why a lot of people mature a lot in the first 5 years of their 20s, is when, because that's when you start to think more complex about situations like that, or like what people are saying to you. um and it just makes me sad that Gabbie somehow, like, people talk so much about grooming the last few years to a point that it's become like ridiculous how Gabbie was able to do this to these people for literally years, and everybody saw her doing it very openly and blazing. Like, when you watch her videos, and if you wonder ever like why she phrases things certain ways or like talks about things, like like we said it earlier, that she lies all the time. In her videos, she just boldface like lies about, like, I never talked to Curtis, and even though she's like admitted it in other places, she talks about it and
Mm-hmm.
phrases things like that because those videos are for her fans. Those videos are her in
Mm-hmm.
re-indoctrinating and re-grooming her fans. She knows that her fans are not going to watch anybody else's content but hers. They're not going to believe anyone else but her. And so she's bold-faced lying in all those videos because that's the narrative that she wants her fans to have in their minds and go out there and say to people. That's why she made all of those,
Yeah.
and that's why she's ever made any videos, honestly, for the last like 3 or 4 years of her career, was she was just trying to re-indoctrinate the people that would listen to her so that they would go out and do what she wanted. Like, it's very obvious when you know how manipulation looks like that. That's why she's just lying, and no, and everyone who's an adult knows that she's lying, but it's for the people that wouldn't listen to anyone else but her. And I just think it's incredible that
Yeah.
out of every, like, Gabbie Hanna is like so talked about, but even now, I haven't seen any videos of people bringing up that she horribly groomed these fans, and a lot of them don't have accounts anymore because they realized when she was gone, I'm sure. And I can't, that
Yeah.
would feel so awful. Like, that would feel horrible to realize that you
Mhm.
were doing this to people. And even if they try to hang on to the idea of being mad at like people like Jessi and stuff still, just so that they don't have to like admit that she never did anything wrong,
Mhm.
it's still horrible to realize that you were talking to people that way for all those years. It's just that would be horrendous. Like I feel weird guilt um about how I used to act. Like my Twitter account got deleted by Twitter because I posted something once that
Mhm.
was a joke, but it was when they started like just getting rid of people's accounts if you said anything that could be resembling like a threat or something. And I said like a joke and they just deleted my entire I had Twitter from like 2008 to like
Oh wow.
2021.
Yeah.
Like I got on it when it was like a very new thing, and it just deleted the entire account. And when I look back, that I'm like, thank God, because that was during all the years it was a huge
Yeah.
mess, and I'm sure that I know that I said just like just horrible things that you do when you haven't worked on your trauma enough. That I would agree with anymore.
Yeah. And as I said, I was like, I was one of the people arguing with the Gabbie Hanna stance. I was definitely a part of this in the bad way. Not the really, really bad way, which is, defending literal rape
Hmm.
at points. But like there's a lot that I regret, and this is something that Shannon and I have been talking about a little bit, like in our own messages of just like having seen the other side of that now, like not just the Epic the Musical stuff. I had it happen where I posted one of those like not all men type of posts talking about, like the things that men do that can be low key intimidating. And I got a bunch of people like, that was the one time I turned off my comments where I was like, I'm turning off the comments on everything because they're not just going to one post, they're going to every post and saying something and stitching videos that have nothing to do with it now and things like that. Having been on that side of it, it's like half the time people are misconstruing the situation in general. They're like, taking the worst interpretation of whatever you're saying possible and running with that. And then the other half are just other people that are emotionally triggered at the same time that you're emotionally triggered. And it's like warring, like of that neither of us are thinking with our frontal lobe right now. And it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't do anything. I don't think it adds to the collective good. Stitching somebody who you see at that moment and you're like, this person's clearly emotional disturbed, but let me get my 2 cents in and get
Hmm.
my comment in and get my content out of this, get some money out of this. It's never worth it. I don't think it's ever truly been worth it to dogpile on somebody. I don't think it's ever worked or had the effect that people wanted to. Even speaking of Jessi Smiles, like I stopped watching the Do We Know Them podcast recently because of them doing
Hmm.
something similar to that. They had this kind of low key thing in their fandom where they were very late with their end of the year award show thing, and the situation blew up because it's one thing to be late on your content. Like we've been late with an upload before, but they were communicating, oh, it's going to be up tomorrow. Oh, it's going to be up tomorrow. And did that like at least 3 or 4 times. And then when they finally uploaded it, Lily essentially did this whole, well, I made the video so great for all you guys and you're ungrateful. And they spent 30 minutes of the podcast after the award show came out just ragging on fans. And one of the things they did during that was they were like, oh, someone spam commented us so many times, and they posted like some of the comments. It was somebody I know. Like it's somebody me and
Hmm.
Shannon know. And so I like when I noticed that, because my first instinct was like, where are these comments? Like these don't look like YouTube comments, because usually that's the platform they're on. They were Instagram comments. And then I go to the Instagram post to try to find who they are. I'm like, I know
Hmm.
her. Oh my God. And so I was literally the person to tell her, like, hey, so they shouted you out in the bad way in the episode. Turns out she had only commented like 3 or 4 times, but they called it spam commenting and acted like she was DMing them on every platform. And so she was getting harassed from just them, like even blurring out her username. People still found it. And so, you know, like they're one of the drama channels who claim like, oh, we don't want people to go after someone for them. But Jessi had made a comment like, oh, we shouldn't blur her username. And like, you know, they did this thing where it was very easy to find our friend. And I was not having it. I was like, this is some hypocrisy. I can't deal with it. And like, yes, I still have this, you know, like want for Jessi to do good things with her life and to have a good life and stuff like that. I still will thoroughly defend her in the Gabbie Hanna stuff and in any situation that has to do with the thing with Curtis Lepore. That should not be brought up anymore at this point, like, you know, 12 years down the line. But at the same time, like, that was one of those moments for me where I was like, what is this worth? Like, what is this going to do? A bunch of people are going to harass my friend now. And
For nothing.
for what? We try to check ourselves all the time. Like, please tell us if we're wrong. Like,
we want people to do that. Like, I don't expect people to just agree with me just because I say it. I want people to like be able to discuss with us about why. I think that's like the fun of fandom stuff, is to be able to like talk things out or like get people to understand like where you're coming from, especially because for whatever reason we always end up thinking things that are not what the rest of the fandom thinks on accident. Like, we don't do that on purpose, but it just happens. And so it's meant to be like as long as it's a discussion and people aren't coming at it as like, I'm trying to prove that you're wrong, it's generally like a good thing. Like, most of the people that comment on the videos we made about season 2 of Percy Jackson didn't necessarily agree with us, but they just liked how we talked about stuff anyway, because it was a new perspective they hadn't heard before. And that's fine.
Wary of creators who want you to do this, first of all. Like, that is number one. There is never a situation that is so dire where a creator needs you, their audience member, who they're never going to meet in real life, who is probably like way younger than them, has way less resources. They're never going to need your help like that. And, you know, like, if something is getting to them that much, that's a sign they need to take a break. They need to go on a walk. They need to go talk to somebody who's not on their phone. And like, that's just the way it is. And sometimes when people are getting dogpiled, the best thing to do is to just stand back. You know, like, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to add to the chatter. You could stand back and watch it and not be a part of it if you're really that morbidly fascinated in what's happening. But there's never a situation that's so dire where your one comment is going to be the thing that changes things or the thing that makes things better. In fact, it might be the thing that makes things worse.
The last thing I guess I'll say, just for us personally, with our content usually being Percy Jackson themed, is that I feel like sometimes people in this fandom feel like they can't like critique things because Becky is around, because Rick and Becky are good people, because there are like, you know, the book purists that are just racist. And it makes people feel like they have to like defend it for existing. But we're not ever going to be somebody like that. And so that's kind of like the space that we wanted this to be, is that like, we're not trying to like get invited to things. We're not trying to get invited to like the premiere or even like events like that. We know that we likely wouldn't be. We're instead like trying to have conversations like that. That's why we tend, when we have unpopular opinions, we just say what they are. And if people get upset by that, that's okay. But we try to like have a space where we can talk about these things. Like, we recently made a video about like Walker and Leah and how people ship them without, you know, being mean to the people that are doing it or anything like that. And it did work. Like, the people in the comments were being very respectable when they were saying like why they don't like it. And so it shows that people can do that. And so I guess I just wanted to just make that point, that I feel like sometimes people get afraid to like critique things when the people that have made it are like, could see it. but you can do it in a respectable way and
Mhm.
like without it being overly mean, and it's not. And so even if you don't agree with what we think about things, and a lot of people like don't, especially with me at the end of this at the last season, that's fine as long as you like let me explain why I feel that way and don't tell me that I'm wrong for feeling that. That's like the thing that always makes me the most upset is when people try to tell me that I'm wrong for even feeling a certain way. Like nobody likes feeling invalidated like that,
Yeah.
but like I guess it's just what we try to do is like have a space where people can talk about that. They can disagree with us if we want, and if things come up and we don't like it, we'll
Mhm.
talk about it, but not in a way to like punish someone. Just to talk about it. There's
No.
no point in being like overly like that. It doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't make anybody understand things any better. It's just like a cycle of rage, and we don't want that. Ironically, because most people think I'm really
Yeah.
angry. um, but we don't want
Yeah.
that.
We're not here to put
Yeah.
more rage in the world. We're here to try to help make it better. And this is where I think it's because both of us have major
Mhm.
Aquarius placements that the way we do it doesn't necessarily always make
Mhm.
sense to people. It's what makes sense to us.
Yeah,
And
I think it's funny
yeah,
that
so
most people online have this idea of me that I'm like always like mad or like being aggressive or whatever about something. And I do have those moments, but
mhm.
most of the time I'm like listening to music or like taking pictures of trees or the sun while crying. And I like read fan fiction
Yeah.
and cry. I watch YouTube video. I do watch a lot of serious things about a lot of like, abuse sort of things because that's just what I think about, but I cry when I listen to it and I get upset by it and think about ways we can like try to help those people in some way, but I'm not as angry or like in
Mhm.
your face as people think. Spend most of my time just wanting to be creative in some way, and I get the most upset when I can't be. And so I'm nothing
Yeah.
like that. And so it's just one of those things. Like if the only time you see me is when I'm yelling at somebody who's being rude on TikTok, that's who you think I am, but that's not who I am at all.
Yeah, it like if anything, I'm actually the more Rachel. Shannon's the one that like legitimately she cries more than I do because I
Mhm.
stifle my emotions like a lot. And so she knows if I cry, oh wait, Mandy's really
Yeah.
not okay.
When
Like we've
when
gotten
Mandy
to that
sends
point.
me a voice note where she's crying, I'm like, I have to pay attention. I like stop everything I'm doing and I'm like, I have to pay attention. I have to listen to this multiple times to make
Yeah.
sure that I say the right thing so that she isn't as afraid to cry one day. Because I do it all the
Yeah.
time. It's fine. I do it literally every day. Oh, probably at least one time a day.
Yeah. But yeah, we as people who have a podcast, as people who have people that like do follow us a little bit, we love you guys. And also I think of you in the same way that like I think of William, which is I have never been going for blind
Mm-mm.
obedience as a parent. You know, like I've never wanted a child who just listens to what I say because I said it. I wanted a kid who questions things, who questions me even. And in practice, that sucks. I will tell you, in practice, it sucks to have a kid who isn't afraid to question you. But at the same time, I'm trying to raise him to be a good adult, not necessarily like trying to raise him in a way that's easiest for me. And I would say the same is true of like any of the viewers that watch us is like we're not trying to turn you
Mm-mm.
into our army. We are trying to turn you into independent thinkers in a way that we feel like is a little bit more trauma informed and takes those things in mind as we look at these different things
Yeah.
in
Like
media in general.
we try to use whatever we use to say why we feel a certain way one way or another. We use the Percy Jackson books as like a source. And so if you don't agree with us, we are trying to encourage people to go back to the books and like read them
Mhm.
and think about what are in them more than like there's somebody that is just like a hot take machine is what I call him on TikTok recently, that is just kind of spurting out whatever he thinks. And like one of the videos I made and like just stitching him for the moment was just to say that sort of thing of like you can't just say that Percy is worse somehow in these books just because you feel like it, without you can like go back to the books and use examples, but to like just say it because that is what you
Mhm.
think without giving any examples, I'm like, you haven't, that's just your opinion. Like you have to like back up your opinion with something. And like it's not like a black and white thing. Like
Mhm.
people can use the same scenes to make a different, like the people who love Luke use the same scenes we use to say why we hate him, to say that why they love him. But it's just more the idea of like we're trying to
Mhm.
encourage people to like go back to the books and reread them and think about them more, to like figure out why they think about it or why they feel that way, instead of just seeing somebody online tell them how they feel and just being like, oh, that's the way that you should feel, right? Because this is like the popular thing that somebody is saying. And it's like, no, I want you to think. I
Mhm.
want you to go back and like read the books and actually think. And if you don't think how we think, that's great. As long as you can explain to me why you think that way, that's like all I want. That's like all we want is just tell me why you don't think that way. Be able to like construct a like an argument about why you don't. That's like what people are talking about with media
Mhm.
literacy. That is what it is. Be able to use the media you're talking about
Mhm.
to explain why you don't like it or why you do like it or whatever. Instead of just being like, I don't like it because Annabeth isn't blonde. Or as like the easy example, like that's not, you can say that you don't like Leah's adaptation of Annabeth if you have actual things to explain why you don't like it. That's like the difference when I say that I don't like the change of Thalia at the end of the season. I have reasons for why I don't. I'm not saying that I don't like it just because it's a change, like other people do. And so
Yeah.
that's all we're trying to ask for people to do is just, if you have a different opinion, that's great. Then like explain to me how you got there so that we can, so then you just have understanding and there's none of like the vitriol and anger
Mhm.
anymore, because you understand where the other person came from and you can just like walk away knowing, because it's not a right or wrong. There is no right versus wrong.
Yeah.
You're just thinking. That's it. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that and make Luke a villain again because we're gonna make that happen.
We're going to do it even if nobody else wants to.
Yes. Okay, so for next week, we're going to cover the Leo and then the Jason chapter, since there's only one Leo chapter, which I think was 3 total. And then we're going to have William on again. I don't know what he has prepared, but he's working on character sheets, at least for the main trio, so that they can be NPCs
Okay.
in our little campaign. So I know he'll at least have that to present, but we'll probably talk something else about how the mechanics of the
Okay.
game are going to work
That'd be
too.
fun.
Yep. So we'll see you guys next week for that. More Heroes of
Bye.
Olympus.